Some children are born into families. Others are chosen. But what happens when the ones who choose you decide they made a mistake? This is the story of Zara. An adopted child who was loved until her mother became pregnant, and her life took a drastic turn. This story will make you question everything you thought about motherhood, family, and the cruel games people play when they forget that love isn't measured in blood. Please, before we continue, do me a favor and subscribe to my channel. Also hit the like button and notification bell. The city hums with its usual chaos, Danfo buses blaring horns, street vendors hawking their wares, and somewhere in the maze of Suralia's residential streets, a woman sits in a cold clinic room, watching her entire world crumble. Her name is Bunmi Williams. And today, she's learning that some prayers take longer to answer than others. The air conditioning in Dr. Oladil's office isn't working properly. It never is. Bunmi fans herself with a pamphlet about fertility treatments while her husband, Khalid, sits rigid in the plastic chair beside her, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. Mrs. Williams, Dr. Oladil says, removing her glasses with the kind of careful slowness that precedes bad news. I'm afraid the test results are not what we hoped for. Bunmi's hand freezes mid-fan. What does that mean? Her voice is smaller than she intended. Dr. Oladil's expression softens with practiced sympathy. It means that conceiving naturally will be extremely difficult. Almost impossible. The word hangs in the air like smoke. Impossible. Bunmi feels Khalid's hand find hers, but she can't feel his warmth. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of feeling like a failure in the one thing she was supposed to naturally succeed at. There are options, Dr. Oladil continues, sliding a folder across her desk. IVF, hormone treatments, surrogacy. How much? Khalid interrupts. The number Dr. Oladil quotes sounds outrageous. Outside, Lagos traffic roars. Inside, Bunmi's dreams rearrange themselves into something she doesn't recognize. 2 years pass like a wound that won't heal. Every treatment fails. Every month brings fresh disappointment. The medications make Bunmi moody, bloated, desperate. She stops attending family parties where relatives parade their children like trophies. She stops going to church where the pastor's wife keeps praying loudly for Sister Bunmi's barren womb to open. Barren. Such an ugly word for such an empty feeling. Then one evening, while Khalid is watching the news and Bunmi is staring at yet another negative pregnancy test, she says the words that will change everything. What about adoption? Khalid's head snaps toward her so fast she hears his neck crack. Adoption? Yes. Adoption. Bunmi's voice grows stronger with each repetition. If we can't have our own, why not give a home to a child who needs one? But Khalid's face tells her this won't be an easy conversation. In their culture, bloodline matters. Legacy matters. And adoption is what people do when they've given up. Bunmi. Don't. She stands, the pregnancy test crumpling in her fist. Don't tell me it's not the same. Don't tell me what your family will say. I'm tired, Khalid. I'm tired of being pitted. I'm tired of being whispered about. I want to be a mother. And if this is the only way. Her voice breaking. Khalid looked at his wife, really looked at her, and see what these years have cost. The light that used to dance in her eyes has dimmed. The laugh that once filled their home has gone quiet. Okay, he said finally. Okay, let's try. 3 months later, they stand in the courtyard of Precious Hearts Orphanage. Children run past, their laughter echoing off the faded yellow walls. Some chase a deflated football. Others play clapping games under the cashew tree. Bunmi's heart clenches with each child she sees. Take your time, Sister Patience, the matron says kindly. Let the right child find you. It sounds mystical, but Bunmi doesn't believe in mysticism anymore. Not after years of believing that God would answer her prayers. Then she saw her. A little girl sitting alone under the mango tree, with a tattered book in her lap. She can't be more than 7, all knobby knees and cornrowed hair with pink beads at the ends. Unlike the other children, she's not playing. She's reading. "Who's that?" Bunmi asked. Sister Patience follows her gaze. "Oh, that's Zara. Sweet child. Been with us since she was 3. Parents died in a car accident on the Ibn Expressway. No other family came forward." Zara looked up at that moment, and her eyes meet Bunmi's. They are old eyes in a young face. Eyes that have seen loss and learned to live with it. Bunmi walked towards her, Khalid trailing behind. "Hello," Bunmi said softly. "What are you reading?" Zara holds up the book, a water-damaged copy of Anansi the Spider Folk Tales. It's about a spider who's very clever. He tricks everyone, but sometimes his tricks teach people important lessons. Her English is clear, precise. Impressive for a 7-year-old. "Do you like stories?" Bunmi asks, sitting down beside her. Zara nods enthusiastically. "Stories are the best. When I read, I can go anywhere. Even though I'm here, I can be in a palace, or flying in the sky, or," she stops, suddenly shy. "Sorry. I talk too much about books." "Don't apologize," Bunmi said to her, and something in her chest loosens. "I like stories too." Khalid watched this exchange with surprise. He's never seen Bunmi connect so quickly with anyone, let alone a child. "What's your name?" Zara asked. "Bunmi. And this is my husband, Khalid. Are you looking for a child?" Zara's voice is casual, but her eyes are hopeful in a way that breaks Bunmi's heart. "Yes. We are." Zara considers this. "I hope you find one. I hope they are good at reading, so you have someone to talk to about stories." It takes Bunmi 3 weeks to complete the paperwork. 3 weeks of background checks and home visits and interviews. Khalid's family expressing concerns. Her mother saying, "But what if she has bad blood? You don't know where she comes from." But Bunmi did not care. The day Zara came home, Bunmi has decorated her room with pink curtains and a bookshelf filled with new books. Nancy Drew. Famous 5. African fairy tales. Everything a reading-loving 7-year-old could want. Zara stood in the doorway, a small backpack containing all her possessions clutched in both hands, staring at the room like it might disappear. "Is this really mine?" she whispered. "Really yours," Bunmi confirms, kneeling down to her level. "Welcome home, Zara." And for the first time in years, when Bunmi says the word home, it feels complete. What follows are the sweetest 6 months of Bunmi's life. Zara blooms like a flower that finally found sunlight. She excels at her new school, St. Catherine's Primary School, bringing home test papers marked with bold red A's that Bunmi hangs on the refrigerator like artwork. Her teachers rave about her reading level, her curiosity, her kindness to other students. At home, she's helpful without being asked. She sets the table before dinner. She organizes her books by author. She remembers to say please and thank you. "You did well," Khalid tells Bunmi one night after they've tucked Zara into bed. "She's a good girl." Bunmi smiled, feeling vindicated. "See." She wants to shout to everyone who doubted. Neighbors stop by to meet the new addition. Some are genuinely warm. Others are clearly judging, looking for cracks in the facade of this unconventional family. "She's so well behaved," Mrs. Adelique from next door said, her tone suggesting this is somehow suspicious. "Are you sure she's not putting on an act?" But Bunmi doesn't care about Mrs. Adelique's opinions. She has a daughter now. A smart, beautiful daughter who calls her Mummy and runs to hug her when she comes home from work. Everything Bunmi touches feels golden during this period. She laughs more. She cooks elaborate meals. She signs Zara up for extra lessons in mathematics and phonics. Then. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Bunmi is in the bathroom, brushing her teeth, when the nausea hits. She barely makes it to the toilet before she's retching, her body convulsing with waves of sickness. At first, she thinks it's food poisoning. That suya from the roadside vendor last night must have been off. But the nausea returns the next morning. And the next. And when her period doesn't come, a wild, impossible hope begins to flutter in her chest like a trapped bird. No. This can't be. She told herself. Don't hope. Hope is dangerous. But she bought a pregnancy test kit anyway. 3 of them, actually, from different pharmacies, because she needs to be sure. In the bathroom, the same bathroom where she cried over countless negative tests, Bunmi watches as 2 pink lines appear on the stick. Then 2 more lines on the second test. And 2 more on the third. Pregnant. After all this time, after all the treatments failed, after she'd finally made peace with adoption. Tears filled her eyes. It seemed the universe was playing tricks with her emotions. It should feel like a miracle. It should feel like answered prayers. But as Bunmi stares at those pink lines, something dark and complicated stirs in her chest. Something she'll spend the next months trying to ignore. In the living room, Zara is doing her homework, humming a song she learned at school, completely unaware that her world is about to change. Bunmi told Khalid that night. And his reactions? His reaction was everything hers should have been, pure, uncomplicated joy. He lifts her off her feet, spinning her around, thanking God with tears in his eyes. We have to tell everyone, he said. My mother, your mother, the whole family. And Zara, Bunmi added quietly. Khalid freezes mid-spin. In his excitement, he'd forgotten about Zara. Yes, he said, setting Bunmi down carefully. Yes, of course. Zara. They told her at dinner. Bunmi watched Zara's face carefully, looking for, what? Jealousy? Fear? Resentment? But Zara's smile is genuine and bright. I'm going to be a big sister? That's wonderful, Mummy. She seemed to mean it. Bunmi reached across the table and squeezed Zara's hand. You'll always be our first daughter, she promised. And she meant it. At least, for now. Bunmi's belly grows with new life, and in 9 months, when she holds her biological daughter in her arms for the first time. Everything changed. Some women can't love a child who doesn't share their blood. And Zara. Zara learned that adoption papers doesn't make you immune to abandonment. They say a mother's love is unconditional. But Bunmi's pregnancy didn't just bring new life, it brought new priorities. And in the Williams household, Zara was about to discover that blood, no matter how thin, is always thicker than water. 9 months passed like a countdown to catastrophe. Bunmi gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Lola. The family erupted in celebration. Finally, a real Williams child. Khalid's mother threw a lavish naming ceremony, inviting everyone who'd ever whispered about Bunmi's barrenness. See. God answers prayers, they proclaimed, passing baby Lola around like a trophy. 10-year-old Zara held her new sister gently, smiling for the photographs. But in those photos, if you looked closely, you'd notice something chilling. Bunmi no longer looked at Zara the same way. The warmth had cooled. The affection had dimmed. It started with small things. Negligible things. Bunmi forgot to attend Zara's school debate competition where she'd placed second. She was too tired from caring for baby Lola. Zara's new school uniform arrived 2 weeks late, budget was tight now with a new baby. Meanwhile, Lola's nursery overflowed with expensive toys and designer clothes. Zara doesn't need new things, Bunmi reasoned. She already has enough. But Zara's shoes had holes. Her backpack was held together with safety pins. Neighbors began to notice the difference. Mrs. Adelik whispered to her husband, "See how she treats that adopted one now." 2 years later, Bunmi had Tiwa. And then came Femi, the long-awaited son. With each biological child, Zara became more invisible. Her bedroom, the one Bunmi had lovingly decorated with pink curtains and bookshelves, was reassigned to Lola. Zara was moved to the small storage room near the kitchen. "You understand, don't you?" Bunmi said, not meeting Zara's eyes. "Lola needs more space as she grows." Zara, now 12, understood perfectly. She understood that she was being erased, gradually. Her books, her precious books, were boxed up to make space for Femi's toys. Dinner time became a daily humiliation. "Zara, serve your siblings before you eat," Bunmi commanded, while the biological children sat like royalty. "Zara, clear the plates." "Zara, why is this floor still dirty?" "Zara, why is this?" "Zara, why is that?" And it continued like that. One evening, when Zara dared to ask for help with her mathematics homework, Bunmi snapped, "I'm tired. Ask your teacher tomorrow. That's what school is for." Meanwhile, she spent 2 hours helping 8-year-old Lola with her much simpler assignment. Khalid witnessed everything from behind his newspaper, his silence a form of violence on its own. "Don't cause trouble," he'd whisper to Zara when Bunmi wasn't listening. Zara's school fees were always paid late now. Sometimes not at all. Her teachers sent notes home. But they ignored them. "We have 3 other children to think about," she told the school principal when summoned. Zara should be grateful she's still in school at all. Meanwhile, Lola, Tiwa, and Femi attended a private school with swimming pools and computer labs. Zara remained in the underfunded public school, wearing a uniform held together by her own careful stitching each night. Her grades remained excellent despite everything, a quiet rebellion against her circumstances. Zara turned 14 and nobody remembered. That evening, Bunmi called her into the living room. Khalid sat in his usual chair, eyes fixed on the floor. The 3 biological children watched from the hallway. "Zara, we need to talk about your future," Bunmi began, her voice artificially gentle. "You're getting older now. School isn't really working out." Zara's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "I mean it's time you learned practical skills. School is expensive. Your results are fine, but I'm top of my class." Zara's voice cracked with desperation. "Don't interrupt me," Bunmi said coldly. "You have to withdraw from school. We can't afford it anymore. We need to make good foundations for our children. You understand, right? Starting from Monday, you'll help more at home. And you'll start selling things in the market. Many girls your age do it. It builds character." The room spun. Zara looked at Khalid, silently begging him to intervene. He cleared his throat. "Bunmi, maybe." "This is my decision," Bunmi cut him off with a look that could freeze blood. Zara's dreams of university, of becoming a nurse, of making Bunmi proud, all of it crumbled like sandcastles before a wave. That night, she cried herself to sleep in her storage room, her old books watching from their boxes like silent witnesses. By morning, she woke at 5 a.m. to fetch water from the public tap 3 streets away. She prepared breakfast for the family who ate without acknowledging her. She washed clothes by hand while Lola, Tiwa, and Femi played video games. At noon, she was sent into the street to hawk goods. "Pure water. Cold pure water," she called out, balancing a basin on her head, her throat raw from shouting. Classmates from her school passed in air-conditioned cars. Some pretended not to see her. Others stared with pity that felt worse than mockery. This was her life now, invisible at home, humiliated in public. While Zara worked, Lola, Tiwa, and Femi rotted from the inside. Lola, now 12, couldn't make her own bed. Bunmi beamed with pride at her biological daughter, blind to the monster she was creating. Tiwa was equally helpless, bright but lazy, expecting everything to be handed to her on a platter of entitlement. And Femi, the precious son, was worst of all. Spoiled beyond recognition, he'd scream until his demands were met. At 10 years old, he still expected to be bathed and fed like a toddler. Khalid watched his household descend into dysfunction with the helplessness of a man who'd chosen peace over principles. He would slip Zara money sometimes, 200 naira here, 500 there. Buy something for yourself, he'd whisper, unable to meet her eyes. Zara would thank him politely, even though what she needed wasn't money. It was a father brave enough to speak up. At night, Khalid's conscience kept him awake. He'd hear Zara's footsteps padding from the storage room to the kitchen at dawn and hate himself a little more each day. But not enough to act. Mrs. Adelik and the other neighbors saw everything. They saw Zara hauling water while Bunmi's biological children slept in. "It's a shame," they whispered. "That woman has forgotten where she came from." "Someone should report her," Mrs. Adelik's husband suggested. "Report what?" "The girl is fed. She has shelter. Technically, it's not abuse." Except it was. The kind of abuse that leaves no bruises, only broken spirits. Despite everything, Zara refused to break completely. She borrowed newspapers from the roadside vendors and read them by candlelight in her storage room. She practiced her mathematics on scraps of paper. She memorized English vocabulary words from an old dictionary she'd salvaged. Education was her rebellion. Knowledge was her escape plan. One day, she whispered to herself, "This won't be my life." She didn't know how. She didn't know when. But she held onto that belief like a drowning person holds onto driftwood, desperately, completely, with every ounce of strength she had left. 3 years of this hell passed. Zara was 17 now, older in spirit than her years, worn down like a stone smoothed by relentless water. It was a Tuesday in September when her body finally gave out. The sun beat down mercilessly on Broad Street as Zara hawked pure water, her head pounding, her vision swimming. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, there'd been no leftovers for her. Pure water. Pure. The world tilted sideways. The basin crashed to the ground. Water bags burst across the hot pavement. Zara collapsed beside them, unconscious before she hit the ground. Strangers gathered, shouting for help. Someone called for a taxi. A good Samaritan paid the fare to the nearest hospital. Zara woke to white walls and the smell of antiseptic. A man in a doctor's coat stood at her bedside, reviewing a chart. He was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a stethoscope draped around his neck like a badge of capability. "Welcome back," he said gently. "I'm Dr. Deo Mensah. You're at General Hospital. You collapsed from severe dehydration and malnutrition. When was the last time you had a proper meal?" Zara's throat was too dry to answer. Dr. Deo, as he'd later insist she call him, got her water. Not the pure water she'd been selling. Clean water in a proper cup. "Thank you," she whispered. As Zara recovered, Deo asked questions. Not intrusive ones, just gentle inquiries that showed genuine interest. Where did she live? Where were her parents? Why was she hawking in that heat? Zara answered carefully, revealing enough but not everything. She'd learned long ago that pity was dangerous. It made people uncomfortable, then distant. But what struck Deo wasn't her circumstances, it was her language. This girl, dressed in rags and collapsing from hunger, spoke English like someone educated. She used words like exacerbate and subsequently. She asked intelligent questions about her for fluids and blood pressure readings. "You're very articulate," he observed. "Where did you go to school?" "I used to attend St. Catherine's schools," Zara said quietly. "But I had to stop." Had to? Or wanted to? Had to. The pain in those two words told Deo everything he needed to know. He'd seen many patients, rich and poor, educated and illiterate. But something about this girl stirred something in him. Maybe it was her dignity despite degradation. Maybe it was the intelligence flickering behind her tired eyes. Or maybe it was simpler than that. He recognized potential being wasted, and it offended his sense of justice. "I'd like to visit you at home," he said. "To make sure you're recovering properly." "Where do you live?" Deo visited the Williams home the following week. Bunmi answered the door in her finest wrapper, all smiles and exaggerated hospitality. She'd heard from Zara that a doctor was coming, a young, unmarried doctor, and her mind had immediately calculated opportunities. "Welcome, welcome. Dr. Deo, we are so grateful for your care." The transformation was instantaneous and shocking. Suddenly, Zara wasn't sleeping in the storage room, Bunmi had given her the guest room. Suddenly, Zara wasn't wearing rags, Bunmi bought her new clothes. Lola was paraded out, dressed like a princess, introduced with suggestive emphasis. "This is our daughter Lola. She's 16, very intelligent, currently in SS2. But Deo wasn't fooled. He saw the calluses on Zara's hands, not from weeks but from years of labor. He noticed how she flinched when Bunmi touched her. He observed how the other children spoke to Zara like hired help when they forgot the doctor was watching. During subsequent visits, he asked Zara questions directly, watching Bunmi's face tighten each time. "Zara, what are you reading these days? Do you miss school? What did you want to be when you were younger?" Each question was a lifeline thrown into dark water. Each answer revealed more of the truth Bunmi was trying to hide. And something else was happening too. Deo was falling in love. Bunmi noticed, and it infuriated her. This doctor, this wealthy, educated, respectable doctor, was supposed to be interested in Lola. Maybe Tiwa as a backup. But Zara? The adopted one? The maid? It was unacceptable. She began sabotaging subtly. "Whenever Deo is around, Zara, go to the market," whenever Deo visited. "Zara, help your sisters with their homework," when Deo tried to talk to her. But Deo was persistent. He started timing his visits for when he knew Zara would be home. He brought her books, medical texts, novels, newspapers. He spoke to her like an equal, not a subordinate. For the first time in years, Zara felt seen. Not as a burden. Not as a servant. As a person worth knowing. Deo arrived one evening with his mother and asked to speak with Khalid and Bunmi formally. He sat in their living room, back straight, and voice clear. "I'd like to marry your daughter, Zara." The silence that followed could have swallowed the world. Bunmi's face went through a spectacular range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, rage, and finally, a forced smile that looked like it caused her physical pain. "Surely you mean Lola," she said, laughing nervously. "Zara is, well, she's not educated. She's just helping around the house. She's not suitable for someone of your status." "I mean Zara," Deo repeated firmly. "And with your permission, I'd like to marry her." Bunmi fought against it. She told Deo that Zara was difficult, that she had bad habits, that she was ungrateful. She even suggested Zara had mental problems from her orphanage days. But Deo wouldn't be deterred. And Khalid, for once in his cowardly life, made a decision. Zara is old enough to choose. If she wants to marry Dr. Deo, She has our blessing. Bunmi's look could have turned him to stone. But it was done. 3 months later, Zara walked out of the Williams house wearing a simple white dress, her hand in Dayo's, her few belongings packed in the same small bag she'd arrived with. She didn't look back. The wedding was small, Dayo's family, a few friends, and notably, no one from the Williams household except Kareed, who came alone. Bunmi refused to attend. Lola, Tiwa, and Femi followed their mother's lead. Let her go, Bunmi spat. She was never really ours anyway. But as Zara exchanged vows with Dayo, promising to love and honor, she smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached the eyes and speaks of hope. For the first time since Bunmi's pregnancy announcement some years ago, Zara felt the weight lift from her shoulders. She wasn't Zara the servant anymore. As Dayo drove Zara to their new home, she stared out the window at the city passing by. Are you scared? Dayo asked gently. No, Zara said. And she meant it. She'd survived Bunmi's cruelty. She'd endured years of humiliation. She'd kept her mind sharp with borrowed newspapers and candlelight studying. Years passed. Zara stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her graduation gown. The girl who'd been denied education was now the woman holding a university degree. Dayo appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Ready, Dr. Mensah's wife? She smiled at their reflection. Ready. Their home was modest but beautiful, filled with books, laughter, and most importantly, love. 2 children played in the living room, 4-year-old Dami and 2-year-old Oyinda. Everything Zara had been denied, she now gave freely. But Zara wasn't content with just personal happiness. She started Second Chance Foundation, a non-profit organization helping orphaned and mistreated children. Every child she rescued felt like rescuing herself. Why do you do this? A journalist asked during an interview. Zara's answer was simple, because I remember what it feels like to be unwanted. And I want every child to know they matter. The foundation grew. Donations poured in. Zara became known, not as the adopted girl who was mistreated, but as the woman who turned her pain into purpose. Meanwhile, William's household was collapsing. Lola had married at 22, a lavish wedding to Kunle, a successful estate developer. Bunmi had been so proud, bragging to neighbors about her daughter's catch. But 6 months into the marriage, Kunle's mother called Bunmi with rage in her voice, "Come and collect your useless daughter." Lola couldn't cook. Couldn't clean. Couldn't manage a household. She spoke rudely to Kunle's family, and expected servants for everything. When Kunle tried to correct her, she'd scream, "My mother never made me do these things." The marriage lasted 18 months before Kunle demanded a divorce and return of bride price. Lola returned to Bunmi's house with her bags and bitterness, accusing her mother as the reason her marriage didn't work. At 24, she was divorced, unemployable, she'd never learned to work, and completely dependent on her aging parents. But deep down, even Bunmi knew the truth: she'd raised Lola to be helpless. And helpless people don't survive in the real world. Tiwa's marriage followed the same tragic pattern. She'd married Biodun, a businessman, at 23. Within 2 years, she too was back home, dragging 2 small children with her. Her offense? She couldn't keep house, she lied constantly, a habit learned from Bunmi, and she spent money recklessly without understanding budgets. Biodun's patience had lasted longer than Kunle's, but eventually, even he gave up. "Your daughter is bringing shame to my family," his mother had told Bunmi during a final meeting. "We cannot continue like this." Another divorce. Another returned bride price. Another failure. Bunmi's house now held 2 bitter adult daughters and 2 young grandchildren in a space that felt increasingly suffocating. But the biggest disappointment was Femi, the precious son. At 28, Femi had never held a job for more than 6 months. Kareed had set him up in business after business. Each one failed spectacularly due to Femi's laziness and mismanagement. He'd also fathered 3 children by different women, accepting responsibility for none. Now he lived at home, unemployed, sleeping until noon, playing video games, and demanding money from his aging father. "When will you be a man?" Kareed shouted during one argument. Femi's response: "You never taught me how." The Williams house had become a monument to failure. Lola occupied her old room with her bitterness. Tiwa lived in the guest room with her 2 children. Femi never left his childhood bedroom. The house that once seemed spacious now felt like a prison. Bills piled up. Kareed's pension couldn't support 6 adults and 2 children. Bunmi's small trading business barely made profit. Neighbors whispered, the same neighbors who'd once envied the Williams family for their biological children. "See how things turned," Mrs. Adelique said. Meanwhile, that Zara they treated badly is doing so well. God is not asleep. And Bunmi heard every whisper. One evening, Bunmi sat in her living room surrounded by her failed children and chaotic grandchildren. Lola and Tiwa were arguing about whose turn it was to cook. Femi was shouting at his video game. The children were crying. Bunmi closed her eyes and, for the first time, allowed herself to think the forbidden thought. What if I had treated Zara differently? What if she'd raised all 4 children with the same discipline? What if she'd taught them all to work, to value education, to build character instead of just collecting privileges? Zara, the one she'd rejected, had built a successful life. While her biological children, given everything, had built nothing. The irony was devastating. Kareed, watching his wife's face, said quietly, "Maybe we should contact Zara." Bunmi's head snapped up. "Never. Bunmi, we need help. The children need help. Maybe Zara." "I said never." But her voice cracked. Pride and desperation warred in her chest. For weeks, she resisted. But as bills mounted and situations worsened, desperation won. 3 months later, Bunmi found herself standing outside Zara's beautiful house, her hands shaking. Could she do this? Could she face the girl she'd destroyed and ask for help? She had no choice. Zara opened the door. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the woman who'd inflicted the pain and the woman who'd survived it. Zara had aged beautifully. Confident. Successful. Happy. Everything showed in her posture. "Mama Bunmi," Zara said quietly. Not, Mummy. Not, Mother. Just the formal address for an older woman. Zara. "May I come in?" Zara stepped aside, and Bunmi entered a home that reflected everything hers wasn't: peaceful, organized, filled with love. Photos on the wall showed Zara's graduation, her children, her foundation's work. A life well lived. They sat in the living room. Deo brought refreshments and excused himself. This conversation needed privacy. Bunmi struggled to begin. "How do you ask for help from someone you destroyed?" "I came to apologize for all the horrible things I did to you. I know no amount of apologies will make up for how I treated you, but I'm sorry. Please. I need your assistance," she finally said. "Your sisters, Lola and Tiwa, their marriages failed. They are home with children. Femi can't keep work. We are struggling financially. I thought, maybe you could help. Maybe give them jobs or money." Zara finished gently. Bunmi flinched but nodded. Zara was quiet for a long moment, and Bunmi held her breath. Would there be revenge? Rejection? The cruelty returned? "I'll help," Zara said finally. "But not the way you're asking. I won't give money. Money won't fix what's broken in Lola, Tiwa, and Femi. But I'll teach them what you should have taught them years ago. She leaned forward. That's if they are willing to work, really work. I'll mentor them. Lola and Tiwa can train at my foundation, learn skills, build careers. Femi can work with Dayo's hospital administrator, but only if he proves himself. No shortcuts. No special treatment. But they need money now. Then they'll stay uncomfortable until they learn, Zara said firmly. You taught me through cruelty that comfort isn't owed. Let them learn through consequence. Bunmi's face hardened. This wasn't what she wanted. She wanted a quick fix, not a lesson. Bunmi stood to leave, too proud to accept these terms. But at the door, she paused. Because deep down, she knew Zara was right. It took Bunmi 2 weeks to make her decision. Finally, she gathered Lola, Tiwa, and Femi in the living room. I need to tell you something, she began, her voice shaking. About Zara. About how I treated her. She confessed everything. I thought blood mattered most, she said, tears finally coming. But I was wrong. I destroyed Zara and I destroyed you too, just in different ways. Femi was silent, perhaps thinking about his wasted 20s. Tiwa asked the question that mattered, will Zara really help us? If you're willing to work. If you're willing to change. It wasn't immediate acceptance. There was anger, denial, resistance. But slowly, desperately, they agreed. Because what choice did they have? 6 months later, things had changed. Lola worked at Zara's foundation, starting at the bottom, filing papers, answering phones, learning humility. It was hard. She cried often. But slowly, she was building real skills. Tiwa trained as a counselor for abused children, her own experience with privilege and its consequences making her surprisingly effective. Femi worked in hospital administration, grunt work, but honest work. For the first time in his life, he was earning his own money. None of them were transformed overnight. Growth is slow and painful. But they were trying. And Zara watched, helping when needed, correcting when necessary, modeling what healthy success looked like. Bunmi visited Zara's home monthly now, not as a guest seeking favors, but as a woman seeking forgiveness. I don't know if I can ever make this right, she said during one visit. You can't, Zara replied honestly. You can't give me back my childhood. But you can stop poisoning the future. It was more grace than Bunmi deserved, and she knew it. 2 years later, Zara hosted a foundation gala. The hall was filled with donors, beneficiaries, and supporters. On stage, she spoke about her journey, the pain, the perseverance, the purpose. In the audience sat her family, Dayo and their children in the front row. And further back, surprising everyone, sat Bunmi, Khalid, Lola, Tiwa, and Femi. Lola and Tiwa were doing better, still struggling, but employed and growing. Femi had been promoted at the hospital, still had far to go, but was trying. And Bunmi? She'd never fully reconcile with what she'd done. But she'd stopped making excuses. As Zara finished her speech, she looked out at the audience and said, I was the unwanted daughter. The one deemed not good enough because I didn't share their blood. But I learned that your value isn't determined by who claims you, it's determined by who you become. The people who rejected me thought they were erasing me. Instead, they were shaping me. Every cruelty taught me resilience. Every rejection taught me self-worth. Every closed door taught me to build my own. And now I stand here, not bitter, but grateful. Because I am proof that your beginning doesn't determine your ending. The audience erupted in applause. Bunmi, in the back, wiped tears from her eyes, finally understanding the magnitude of what she'd almost destroyed. That night, Zara returned home. Her children were asleep. Dayo was reading in bed. She stood at her children's bedroom door, watching them sleep peacefully, and made a silent promise. I will never make you earn my love. I will never make you compete for my attention. I will never treat you as less than because of circumstances beyond your control. You are wanted. You are loved. You are enough. She'd broken the cycle. And in breaking it, she'd won. This is the story of Zara, the unwanted daughter who became the woman everyone wanted to be. It teaches us that cruelty always comes home to roost. That children become what you teach them, through action or neglect. That blood doesn't make family, love, discipline, and character do. But most importantly, it teaches us that being rejected by the wrong people is sometimes the best thing that can happen. Because when they push you out, they push you toward your destiny. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt unwanted or overlooked? How did you overcome it? What would you have done in Zara's position, revenge or forgiveness? Drop your answers in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that like button. If you believe in second chances, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more African stories that teach powerful life lessons, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. Remember, your beginning is not your ending. Your rejection is not your definition. You are not unwanted. Until next time, keep believing, keep growing, and keep breaking cycles.